law, and who are held accountable by a public that believes oaths matter more than party tribalism or the cheap thrill
My name
of
is Vera
scoring
Richardson,
political
and
points.
I am listening to the
We, the
conclusion
people,
of
must
the
demand
January
more of our
6th hearing.
politicians and ourselves.
And I'll let you just hear
Oaths
this of it.
Character matters. Truth matters. If we do not renew our faith and commitment to these principles, this great experiment of ours, our shining beacon on a hill, will not endure. I yield to the gentlewoman from Virginia.
Powerful words,
Thank you, Mr. Ginsburg.
powerful conclusion by
Throughout
a
our
Republican
hearings, we
representative.
provided many facts and painted a vivid picture of the events of January 6th. The violence, the human toll, both emotional and physical, including the tragic loss of life. The threats to our Constitution, the rule of law, and the danger to this nation, a nation we all love as Americans. In tonight's hearing, we've gone into great detail about the events inside the White House on January 6th. We've described how the President of the United States, who was bound by oath to the Constitution and by duty to ensure the laws are faithfully executed, took no action when the cornerstone of our democracy, a peaceful transition of power, was under attack. But it's more than that. Donald Trump summoned a violent mob and promised to lead that mob to the Capitol to compel those he thought would cave to that kind of pressure. And when he was thwarted in his effort to lead the armed uprising, he instigated the attackers to target the vice president with violence. A man who just wanted to do his constitutional duty. But in the end, this is not, as it may appear, a story of inaction in a time of crisis. But instead, it was the final action of Donald Trump's own plan to assert the will of the American people and remain in power. Not until it was clear that his effort to violently disrupt or delay the counting of the election results had failed did he send a message to his supporters in which he commiserated with their pain, and he told them affectionately to go home. That was not the message of condemnation and just punishment for those who broke the law that we expect from a president whose oath and duty is to ensure the laws are faithfully executed. But instead, it was his newest version of stand back and stand by.
I
To
totally
me,
agree.
this is personal. I first swore an oath to support and defend the Constitution against enemies foreign and domestic when I entered the U.S. Naval Academy at age 17.
Oh,
I
when my
spent 2
son
decades on
entered
ships at sea,
Marine Corps at age
defending our nation
18
from known and
and served as
identifiable foreign enemies who
the
sought to do
equivalent
us
of a
harm.
military police officer.
I never imagined that enemy would come from within. I was not as
I don't know what
prescient
their
as
title
Abraham Lincoln,
is,
who
but
23
that's what it
years
was.
before the Civil War said, if destruction be our lot,
And
we must ourselves be its
served our
author
country
and
for
its
4
finisher.
years to join a police force,
Donald Trump was
and
the
has since
author,
retired
and we the
from
people,
that police
for
department.
ourselves and our posterity, should not let Donald Trump be the finisher. Thank you, and I yield to the Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Luria. I want to
Liz
thank our
Cheney is now
witnesses for
coming
joining
up.
us today. Members of the
speaking.
Select Committee may have additional questions
has
for
been
today's
an
witnesses,
awesome
and we ask that you respond expeditiously in writing to those questions. Without objection, members will be permitted
Co-chair
10 business days to submit statements for the record,
of the
including
January 6th
opening
hearing.
remarks and additional questions from our witnesses. I'd now like to turn things to Chairman Thompson for a few closing words.
Unfortunately,
The members
Chairman
of the
Thompson
committee,
has
and I
COVID.
appreciate and thank all persons who've come forward
so he
voluntarily
wasn't present
to
at
provide
this
information to help
prime
protect
time
our democracy.
hearing.
And our work continues. As we've made clear throughout these hearings, our investigation is going forward. We continue to receive new information every day. We are pursuing many additional witnesses for testimony. We will reconvene in September to continue laying out our findings to the American people and pushing for accountability. In the first hearing of this series, I asked American people to consider the facts and judge for themselves. The facts are clear and unambiguous. I thank the American people for their attention over the past several weeks. I wish you all a pleasant evening.
Let me again thank our witnesses today. We've seen bravery and honor in these hearings. And Ms. Matthews and Mr. Pottinger, both of you will be remembered for that, as will Cassidy Hutchinson. She sat here alone, took the oath, and testified before millions of Americans. She knew all along that she would be attacked by President Trump and by the 50, 60, and 70-year-old men who hide themselves behind executive privilege. Like our witnesses today, she has courage, and she did it anyway. Cassidy, Sarah, and our other witnesses, including Officer Caroline Edwards, Shay Moss, and her mother, Ruby Freeman, are an inspiration to American women and to American girls. We owe a debt to all of those who have and will appear here. That brings me to another point. This committee has shown you the testimony of dozens of Republican witnesses, those who served President Trump loyally for years. The case against Donald Trump in these hearings is not made by witnesses who were his political enemies. It is instead a series of confessions by Donald Trump's own appointees, his own friends, his own campaign officials,
his own
people who
children.
worked for him for years, and his own family.
Yes.
They have come forward and they have told the American people the truth. And for those of you who seem to think the evidence would be different if Republican leader McCarthy had not withdrawn his nominees from this committee, let me ask you this. Do you really think Bill Barr is such a delicate flower that he would wilt under cross-examination? Pat Cipollone, Eric Hirschman, Jeff Rosen, Richard Donahue, of course they aren't. None of our witnesses are. At one point in 2016, when he was first running for office, Donald Trump said this: "I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and
Yes.
shoot somebody,
And
and I
get away
wouldn't
with it.
lose any voters."
Yes, indeed.
That quote came to mind last week when audio from Trump advisor Steve Bannon surfaced on October 31st, 2020, just a few days before the presidential election. Let's listen.
And what Trump's going to do is just declare victory, right? He's going to declare victory. And that doesn't mean he's a winner. He's just going to say he's a winner. The Democrats, more of our people vote early that count. Theirs voted in May. And so they're going to have a natural disadvantage, and Trump's going to take advantage of it. That's our strategy. He's going to turn himself a winner. So when you wake up Wednesday morning, it's going to be a firestorm. Also, if Trump is losing by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's going to be even crazier. No, because he's going to sit right there and say they stole it. If Biden's winning, Trump is going to do some crazy shit.
That's the end of it. That's
And
crazy.
of course, 4 days later, President
Planned
Trump
from the
declared
beginning,
victory
but-
when his own campaign advisors told him he had absolutely no basis to do so. What the new Steve Bannon
Regardless of the
audio demonstrates
consequences.
is that Donald Trump's
Leaving
plan
early.
to falsely claim victory in
Or
2020, no matter what the facts
Losing
actually
when all the
were,
votes are
was
counted.
premeditated.
The strategy was to
worse,
stay in office by any
Donald
means
Trump
necessary.
believed he could convince his voters to buy it, whether he had any actual evidence of fraud or
Mhm.
not. And this same thing continued to occur from Election Day onward until January 6th. Donald Trump was confident that he could convince his supporters the election was stolen, no matter how many lawsuits he lost, and he lost scores of them. He was told over and over again in immense detail.
This has been eye-opening. It's been better than any scripted television show or even movie. I think of my emotions and reactions to White House Down movie a couple of decades ago now. this is worse than that. I remember the day I was watching television and watching his speech, and after he had told them to march down to the Capitol, and they did. I called my son, my only son, the retired cop and Marine, to tell him, "Are you watching? You need to turn on your television. You need to turn on your television. The Capitol, they're marching to the Capitol. They're attacking the Capitol." And I just couldn't believe it. I thought I was in another country or in a twilight zone, that this could not possibly be happening in America. But prior to January 6th, because I am a political junkie with a major in political science and a minor in criminal justice, and I've worked campaigns before and love politics, um, uh, and definitely understood that President Obama was denied, not only the ability to appoint a Supreme Court justice to the Supreme Court for 9 months by Mitch McConnell, and that any actions or they would have impeached him for anything. Realizing that, and that now Biden, who is vice president, was being denied um, to I'm lost. This is it's even for me, somebody who follow politics daily, and it's still cray. It's hard to process, but I know that Democrats and all people who believe in democracy, regardless of your party affiliations, we have no idea what is still in the works for this democracy. And the only way to stop them is for people to vote out Republicans, give the Democrats a larger Senate majority in the Senate, and to vote for Democrats so that they keep the House, so that the Republicans cannot cause the chaos that they caused the President Obama's presidency, and more importantly, the continued possibly chaos and coup, and maybe even a race riot or a riot, a race war, and are a coup, a military coup. It's all possible, but we can and must save our democracy. It is bigger than any one person. And I think what enabled Trump is that the Republicans have always changed the rules or not played by the rules. One of the times that they changed the rules, and I think that I'm not going to classify it as change the rules, but they met on January the 20th during in 2009, pretty sure that was the date, during President Obama's inauguration. Senator McCarthy was there, Scalise was there, Rep. Scalise was there, Paul Ryan. I'm gonna stretch that because my memory, I'm not sure if he was there, but and Frank Luntz, Luntz, who was a Fox commentator and a poster. He assembled that group of people in Washington, And they decided at that meeting that they would sabotage President Obama, even if it meant sabotaging America's economy by voting no and saying no to everything that he proposed. And they did that strategy, and it crippled President Obama, and now President Biden were able to get some of their agenda done, but most of it, especially that first year, was not accomplished. And no one spoke up. It's kind of like when people were like, well, I didn't say anything when this happened, and I didn't say anything when that happened. And finally, when they came for me, there was nobody to stand up for me. So we need to stand up for this country. And the way we can stand up is to vote. Vote in record numbers that are too large for them to steal. Vote if you are a white female. Change your registration. No, you don't even have to change your registration if you're a white female. Because you go in the voting booth by yourself, and if you're going to be, and you may have to vote in person if you don't want to have your spouse seeing, like, if you're voting by mail, like who you voted for before you seal the envelope. Vote in person for Democrats up and down the ticket. And the next year after that, after we survive the midterm elections, it's mandatory that Democrats be in control of state houses, as many as possible, attorney general offices all over this nation, and especially in Washington in Congress, because the Republicans have shown us who they are. They've shown us in 2008 when they sabotaged President Obama. Mitch McConnell has shown us who he is when he denied a Supreme Court Obama 9 months to refuse to even have a vote on Garland, who's now the Attorney General of the United States of America, on him becoming a Supreme Court justice. And then in 2020, when we were already voting for all over this country, McConnell and company rushed through Amy Barrett, who is unqualified compared to any of the other justices that's on the bench. While the election was going on, when his stated reason that he wasn't going to let President Obama appoint a Supreme Court justice 9 months out because the voters should decide. There's nowhere in the Constitution that says voters decide on when and who is going to be on a Supreme Court. I think that decision by McConnell was more racial than political. And we have to face the fact. It is not being a racist to call out racism, to call out examples or name, factual examples of racism. The first African-American president, they plotted on him the night of his inauguration, and no one has been held accountable for that. As a matter of fact, Kevin is the minority leader in the House, Kevin McCarthy, and he is hoping to become the majority leader. A man who said that Trump is responsible for the January 6th violence that include deaths, violence that include Vice President Pence refusing to get in the limousine with his Secret Service detail, because he didn't know where they were going to take him, and he knew it was part of the plot to delay the count, the certification of the 2020 election, which would have given Trump and his supporters, including the Oath Keepers, and all of those people, an opportunity to really steal the election. Not only steal the election, but to destroy this country. We are not a perfect nation by any means. And I I am just glad and blessed that I got to see an African American president, and that he served 2 terms despite all that they did. And I was going to say disappointed, but I really can't say that, because I believe that all things work for the good. All things work for the good for those that love Jesus, love God, and are called according to his purpose. So President Obama had to go through what he went through. And unfortunately, or using my biblical reference, even Hillary's defeat worked for the good. I remember working on her campaign as a paid organizer in Winston-Salem, and I met a biracial student, and I was talking to him to get him to register to vote. And he told me that he wanted Trump to win because it would show this nation how racist this country is. And he said that Trump would be such a horrible president that would be good for this nation to see. And I wonder about that student, what he's doing now and what he feels about this Trump presidency and the January 6th violent attack, insurrection, coup attempt, effort to destroy this democracy. I wonder what he's thinking now. Another person that I met in North Carolina was a first grader, and his mom gave me permission. I was out registering voters one night in Winston-Salem, and I went to a pizza shop that was open in the let's say in a minority neighborhood in Winston-Salem, and his mom was working there, and he was there, and he said that he supported Hillary Clinton if he could vote, and he said that he opposed, he didn't like Donald Trump, and I asked him to elaborate, and he said that part of his thing why he didn't like Donald Trump was that you never know. He can make you a slave. And I was like, he can make you a slave? For a first grader, he saw what Trump, what a horrible president he would be. And worse than that, for him to fear that he could actually send Black people back to being slaves. Imagine if he had been successful in January 6th. I talked to his mom on social media maybe about 3 or 4 months ago, and she told me that he was doing well, and I'm having a senior moment. I just remember that she said he was doing well. And that is that's where we are now. So our task, in my opinion, is to tell everyone you know, still riding with Biden, to vote. Vote. I had a conversation today with a black male who I'm assuming is educated has a college degree based on his, he just retired from the occupation that he had. But he made the statement that Biden is too old and that Biden should run. And I said to him, okay, so who should run? Who has the ability to win a national election in 2024 as our president and to win? And he couldn't name anyone. He came up with, who did he say? And I said, that person doesn't have national recognition and he couldn't win. So as to my people that look like me, who are African Americans or just have skin tone like me, please realize that politics is not getting a perfect candidate. There are no perfect candidates. That's why I worked 12 and 16-hour days in North Carolina. Because even though Hillary was not a perfect candidate, she was not my first choice. I did a blog saying that we can have another Obama term with Biden as president. And Biden decided not to run. And I have my feelings about why he decided not to. But looking at things now, all things work together for the good for those who love God and according to his purpose. It wasn't his term. We had to have a Trump before we could have a Biden. That's deep. And Biden has the most transformative presidency just by his cabinet, just by the fact that he appointed the first African American Supreme Court Justice Brown, to the United States Supreme Court. Something that I wanted President Obama to do. I thought that he should have appointed, she was the Supreme Court, the head of the Supreme Court in her state, Florida or Georgia. But he didn't. He went with a Harvard alumni. But Biden did. Not only that, he has a amazing vice president who's also a Black female, a member of my sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So we are blessed. And his defense secretary is a Black male. And he has Hispanics, people of all races and nationalities, and all sexual orientations. And for those of you all who have, as Christians, who have a problem with, say, abortion or the gay community, God gives all of us a choice. And if God gives all of us a choice, his choice for us is that we can serve him or not serve him. We can confess him as our Lord and Savior and be saved, or not, and according to my beliefs, not be saved. So who are we to judge someone for their sexual preferences, or if they or believe in or actually has an abortion. Only God is the judge. And anyone who has, in their opinion, committed any type of sin as it relates to their Christianity can pray to God, ask forgiveness, and He will forgive our sins. So that, don't let that keep you home from voting because of someone's position on abortion or other issues. Because in the end, someone has to be president. So if you have to pick the lesser of two evils, vote, and vote for the candidate that you know who believes in equality and justice for all Americans. Biden isn't offering anything special to African Americans. He has elected qualified, highly qualified people in his administration. And Liz Cheney is doing a great job. But let's remember, Liz Cheney has her own motivations. And there's nothing wrong with her having a motivation because she's doing a great job. But her thing is that she could be the first female president. Who wouldn't think that now? Who wouldn't think that would be her next goal or one of her goals in life? So stay focused. Thank her for doing a great job. But in the end, because if we get another Republican, we don't know who they will appoint and who would be in their administration and what their agenda would be. But we know for a fact, we know this factually, America, if you're white, black, female, old, gay, that the Democrats stands for equality, and President Obama and Biden have shown us, not just with words, but with deeds, by the appointments and by the bills that they're trying to pass, including getting rid of the $1 trillion tax cuts, that trillions of dollars that Trump gave to the Republicans. I'm full and thankful, and I'm blessed, despite of my circumstances, because I know myself that God did not bring me this far to leave me. My divine purpose is to shed light on employment discrimination so that light will reveal that the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII, which is employment discrimination and retaliation, needs to be amended again. And I think that it should be amended so that one judge can throw out those cases, but any person, member of Congress, or even the president, vice president, or any of our highly qualified senators and Vice President Harris could, and the president's staff, period, could write a well-written amendment to that act. And the good news is it's already been done before. President Obama, the first act that he signed in January of 2009 was an amendment to the same act, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title VII, and it's called the Ledbetter Act. And that case involved Ledbetter discovering, when she was getting ready to retire, that people at her where she worked, the males were making more money for doing the same job that she was doing. And she wasn't able to get any relief in court because the statute of limitation had ran out when she discovered that they were making more. And so it has been done before. And I hope the Democrats do not let the fact that my situation involved the Democrats did it to me. And even though the Democrats did it for me, I wasn't, I still worked hard for Democrats. In 2014, I worked for the Harris County Democratic Party as a paid fellow. I worked hard. We lost in 2014 in Harris County. That's a whole different, another video about that. And then in 2016, after Biden didn't run, and even after all the bad things that I had, bad but truthful things, and I won't use the word bad, but my anti-Hillary for 20 for 2008 because of the actions that she and President Clinton did to try and get her elected to be the nominee instead of President Obama. I still sought and was hired as an organizer on her campaign. And in that, I will tell you more about that experience. But I am so thankful that my volunteers worked with me and helped me to deliver the governorship. Roy Cooper was elected in part because of my hard work. My precinct was predominantly Black. They didn't volunteer as much as others districts, but they vote, and they've always voted. And I remember Eric Ellison, who was the Forsyth County Democratic chair, coming to our office the night of the election, and all of the Black staff, it was 4 of us at the time, we were in the office, and the other organizers, they had gone to a hotel. We thought we were going to be having a celebration, but for us, we knew what it meant to us as African Americans that Trump had won. So we didn't go to celebrate or to drink we stayed in the office. And I remember him getting my laptop and to check the results of Winston-Salem. And he was able to tell us then that Roy Cooper was going to win because he won because of the turnout in Winston-Salem and the votes in Winston-Salem. And he was correct. It was such a tight election, though, that they had a recount, and I think it may have lasted for a month. I sought and was offered a position to participate in that recount, but ultimately decided to go on back home to Texas. I was physically drained. So January 6th, hearings, they're going to start up again. They said they're going to possibly have some more coverage, and I hope that they do. And I hope that all of you will share this broadcast just so people can see that you don't have to be have a political position. You could be like me, who took President Obama advice literally when he said, you are the change that you've been waiting for. You can make a difference. And I've been doing that, trying, and I will continue to do it. That's it. Thank you very much. Good night.